What up, everybody? This is your boy Tech G back with another video to help you successfully pass the CompTIA Network Plus N10-007 certification. So let's get into it. In this video, you're going to learn about the purpose and uses of various networking ports and protocols. So let's talk about some ports and protocols. Let's start off with SSH and SFTP, which use port 22. So Secure Shell. This is a cryptographic network protocol for operating network services securely over an unsecured network. SSH is more secure than FTP and Telnet. Typical applications include remote command line, login, and remote command execution, but any network service can be secured with SSH. SSH servers housing data a client wants to retrieve utilizes port 22, and we need to have that port open to get access to the data. As previously mentioned, regular FTP, this is an insecure port, whereas Secure Shell FTP or SFTP is a secure way of utilizing TCP port 22 as it is run over an SSH session. Next, let's talk about DNS. So DNS or domain name system. This is a hierarchical and decentralized naming system for computers, services, or other resources connected to the internet or a private network. It associates various information with domain names associated to each of the participating entities. Most prominently, it translates more readily memorized domain names to numerical IP addresses, which are needed for locating and identifying computer services and devices with the underlying network protocols. In other words, DNS can be thought of as being the phone book of the internet. Instead of memorizing IP addresses to get a website such as YouTube, one can simply type in the URL or the Uniform Resource Locator, which is also known as the web address bar, such as www.youtube.com, and the DNS will match the name up to the IP address that is associated with youtube.com to take your client device to YouTube. When manually configuring an IP address, you typically provide the IP address of a DNS server or the IP addresses of multiple DNS servers as part of the configuration process. And some texts refer to DNS as either domain name service or domain name server, which is not all the way technically correct, but it is understood by those in the IT industry. Next, let's talk about Smtp, which uses port 25. So Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. This is a communication protocol for email transmission. Smtp uses port 25 to send email from a client system to an email server, which also uses SMTP to relay messages to a receiving email server. To configure email settings on the client device, just check with your ISP or the organization that provides internet access for the settings, such as the server type, whether you're using SMTP, POP3, or Imap, the ports that are going to be used, the username and password for access to those servers, and the security settings as to whether or not you're going to be using SSH or not. Next, let's talk about FTP, which uses ports 20 and 21. So the file transfer protocol. This is a standard network protocol used for the transfer of computer files between the client and server on a computer network. FTP is also used by web browsers. To access an FTP site, you will use the prefix FTP:// Windows, Linux, and Mac. They contain a command line FTP program. You would just simply type FTP, press enter, and then type help at the FTP prompt to see the commands that you can use. FTP sites with downloads available to any user. They support anonymous FTP. An anonymous FTP is a means by which archive sites allow general access to their archives of information. These sites create a special account called Anonymous, and user Anonymous has limited access rights to the archive host, as well as some operating restrictions. Some FTP sites require the user to log in with a specified username and password. One drawback to FTP is that it is not considered secure due to FTP login credentials being transmitted and authenticated in clear text. And to increase security, you would use FTP secured with SSL TLS or FTPS or Secure File Transfer Protocol or SFTP. Let's talk about TFTP, which uses port 69. So Trivial File Transfer Protocol is a simple lockstep file transfer protocol which allows a client to get a file or put a file onto a remote host. One of its primary uses is in the early stages of nodes booting from a local area network. TFTP has been used for this application because it is very simple to implement. Due to its simple design, TFTP can be easily implemented by code with a small memory footprint. It is therefore the protocol of choice for the initial stages of any networking booting strategy like BootP, Pixie, BSDP, etc. when targeting from highly resourced computers to very low resource single board computers and systems on a chip. It is also used to transfer firmware and configuration files to network appliances like routers, firewalls, IP phones, etc. But today, TFTP is virtually unused for internet transfers. Let's talk about Telnet, which uses port 23. So Telnet, this is an application protocol used on the internet or a local area network to provide bidirectional, interactive, text-oriented communication facility using a virtual terminal connection. A Telnet emulation enables a user to connect to a remote host or device using a Telnet client over port 23. A Telnet connection allows for users to Telnet into a computer that hosts their website to manage their files remotely versus simply downloading pages and files as if he or she would with an HTTP or FTP connection. And before a Telnet connection from a client can be established, a remote computer must already be configured to accept a Telnet login on port 23, and that port must be open before a login can take place. Now, to utilize the Telnet command on a Windows or Linux computer by way of a command line Telnet program, you would have to open a connection to a remote computer followed by opening a command prompt in Windows or a terminal session in Linux and then typing Telnet and pressing enter. For help command, you would just simply type help and then press the enter key. And Telnet has been removed from recent versions of Mac due to the standard practice of using SSH. But if Telnet is still needed, it is possible to install it. Let's talk about DHCP, which uses port 67 and 68. So Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. This is a network management protocol used on IP networks whereby a DHCP server dynamically assigns an IP address and other network configuration parameters to each device, such as PCs, printers, servers, routers, etc. on a network so they can communicate with other IP networks. A DHCP server enables computers to request IP addresses and networking parameters automatically from the ISP, reducing the need for a network administrator or a user to manually assign IP addresses to all network devices. In the absence of a DHCP server, a computer or other device on the network needs to be manually assigned an IP address or to assign itself a PIPA address, the latter of which will not enable it to communicate outside of its local network. If you get your address from a DHCP server, you are getting your address assigned dynamically and it could change periodically. Some devices on the network, they require static addresses that do not change, such as printers and servers, which have to be assigned manually by a network administrator. This enables these devices to be more reliable and easily accessible over time. And DHCP uses ports 67 and 68, whereas UDP port 67 is the destination port of a server and UDP port 68 is used by the client. Let's talk about HTTP and HTTPS. So Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This is an application protocol for distributed collaborative hypermedia information systems. HTTP is the foundation of data communication for the World Wide Web, where hypertext documents include hyperlinks to other resources that the user can easily access. So for example, by a mouse click or by tapping the screen in a web browser. HTTP is used by all major web browsers such as Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge, Firefox, and Chrome. HTTP for unsecured sites use the prefix HTTP : //, whereas sites that are secured with various forms of encryption, such as HTTP Secure or HTTP over SSL, which is also known as HTTPS, they use the prefix HTTPS : //. HTTP uses port 80 and HTTPS uses port 4 443. To check to see if a website is secure, most browsers, they will display a closed padlock symbol right next to the website's address in the web address bar. Let's talk about Snmp, which uses port 161. So Simple Network Management Protocol. This is an internet standard protocol for collecting and organizing information about managed devices on IP networks and for modifying that information to change device behavior. Devices that typically support SMTP include cable modems, routers, switches, servers, workstations, printers, etc. And they are often incorporated into software known as Network Management System, or NMS. The NMS is the main software installed on a computer known as a manager that controls everything Snmp based. The devices to be monitored are known as managed devices, and NMS installs a small piece of software known as an agent that allows the NMS to monitor those managed devices. And once again, Snmp, it uses port 161. Let's talk about RDP, which uses port 3389. So Remote Desktop Protocol. This is a proprietary protocol developed by Microsoft, which provides a user with a graphical interface to connect to another computer over a network connection. The user employs RDP client software for this purpose, which is known as Remote Desktop Services, while the other computer must run RDP server software or remote desktop connections. And once again, RDP, it uses port 3389. Let's talk about NTP, which uses port 123. So the Network Time Protocol. This is a networking protocol for clock synchronization between computer systems over packet-switched variable latency data networks. NTP is intended to synchronize all participating computers to within a few milliseconds of coordinated universal time. It uses the intersection algorithm to select accurate time servers and is designed to mitigate the effects of variable network latency. NTP can usually maintain time to within tens of milliseconds over the public internet and can achieve better than 1 millisecond accuracy and lands under ideal conditions. Asymmetric routers and network congestion can cause errors of 100 milliseconds or more. The protocol is usually described in terms of a client-server model, but can as easily be used in peer-to-peer relationships where both peers consider the other to be a potential time source. Implementations send and receive timestamps using UDP port 23. They can also use broadcasting and multicasting, where clients passively listen to time updates after an initial round-trip calibrating exchange. NTP supplies a warning of an impeding leap second adjustment, but no information about local time zones or daylight savings time is transmitted. Let's talk about SIP, which uses port 5060 and 5061. So the Session Initiation Protocol is a signaling protocol used for initiating, maintaining, and terminating real-time sessions that include voice, video, and messaging applications. SIP is used for signaling and controlling multimedia communication sessions in applications of internet telephony for voice and video calls, in private IT telephone systems, and instant messages over internet protocol networks, as well as mobile phone calling over LTE. The protocol defines the specific format of messages exchanged and the sequence of communications for cooperation of the participants. SIP is a text-based protocol incorporating many elements of HTTP and SMTP. A call established with SIP may consist of multiple media streams, but no separate streams are required for applications such as text messaging. The exchange data as payload in the SIP message. SIP clients typically use TCP or UDP on ports 5060 or 5061 for SIP traffic to servers and other endpoints. Port 5060 is commonly used for non-encrypted signaling traffic, whereas port 5061 is typically used for traffic encrypted with transport layer security. Let's talk about SMB, which uses port 445. So server message block, one version of which is also known as Common Internet File System, or CIFS. This is a network communication protocol for providing shared access to files, printers, and serial ports between nodes on a network. It also provides an authenticated inter-process communication mechanism by way of using packets that authenticate remote computers. SMP uses ports 137 through 139 for SMB traffic using NetBIOS over TCP, also known as NetBT, and it uses port 445 for SMB hosted on TCP. CIFS was originally used as the standard method for sharing files via corporate intranets and the internet. CIF has now been widely replaced by updated versions of SMB, such as SMB 2.0 and 3.0. Let's talk about POP3, which uses port 110. So Post Office Protocol version 3. This is an application layer internet standard protocol used by email clients to retrieve email from a mail server. Email is downloaded from the mail server to folders on a local system. For users who frequently switch between computers and or mobile devices, POP3 email is not a suitable solution for checking emails on multiple devices due to the email being downloaded onto only one device when the client device puts in a request. Users who utilize POP3 servers to retrieve email typically use SMTP to send messages. POP3 is the current version standard that is used, and once again, it uses ports 110. Let's talk about Imap, which uses port 143, so Internet Message Access Protocol. This is an internet standard protocol used by email clients to retrieve emails from a mail server over a TCP/IP connection. Imap was designed with the goal of permitting complete management of an email box by multiple email clients. Therefore, clients generally leave messages on the server, which can be retrieved from multiple devices from any location until the user explicitly deletes them. Imap 4 is the current version of Imap, and to configure an Imap-based email account, you must select Imap as the email server type. You need to specify the name of the server. You need to supply a username and password, and then you need to indicate whether the server is using SSL. And once again, Imap uses port 143. Let's talk about LDAP, which uses port 389 and 636. So lightweight directory access protocol. This is an open, vendor neutral, industry standard application protocol for accessing and maintaining distributed directory information services over an IP network. Domain directory services, they play an important role in developing intranet and internet applications by allowing the sharing of information about users, systems, network, services, and applications throughout the network. As such, directory services may provide any organized set of records, often with a hierarchical structure, such as a corporate email directory. Microsoft refers to this as directory services, and LDAP, once again, it uses ports 389, and LDAPS or LDAPS over TLS SSL, it uses port 636. Let's talk about the H.323, which uses port 1720. So H.323 defines the protocols to provide audio-visual communication sessions on any packet network. The H.323 standard addresses call signaling and control, multimedia transport and control, and bandwidth control from point-to-point and multi-point conferences. It is widely implemented by voice and video conferencing equipment manufacturers. It is used within various internet real-time applications and is widely deployed worldwide by service providers and enterprises for both video and voice services over IP networks. Now let's start talking about protocols. So what is a communication protocol? So a communication protocol, this is a system of rules that allow two or more entities of a communication system to transmit information via any kind of variation of a physical quantity. A protocol defines the rules, syntax, semantics, and synchronization of communication and possible error recovery methods. And protocols may be implemented by hardware, software, or a combination of both. And protocols are designed to allow for applications to send and receive data via predefined ports on a network adapter to make connections to another computer. And port numbers on computers are used to identify protocols for the purpose of sorting various processes. So for example, if you want to visit www.technologyg.com, you would open up a browser and type http:// www.technologyg.com. The hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP. This is what is being used to make a connection to the web server known as technologyg.com. For the transmission of data, HTTP selects an unused outbound port on your computer to send and receive data to and from the web server technologyg.com. On the technologyg.com web server, port 80, which is the inbound port corresponding to HTTP, is open at all times to allow for a computer to make a connection to the technologyg.com web server. Let's talk about Icmp, so the Internet Control Message Protocol. This is a supporting protocol in the Internet Protocol Suite, or the IP suite. It is used by network devices, including routers, to send error messages and operational information indicating success or failure with communicating with another IP address. So for example, an error is indicated when a requested service is not available or that a host or router could not be reached. Icmp differs from transport protocols such as TCP and UDP in that it is not typically used to exchange data between systems, nor is it regularly employed by end-user network applications, with the exception of some diagnostic tools like ping and traceroute. Let's talk about UDP. So User Datagram Protocol is one of the core members of the IP suite. With UDP, computer applications can send messages, also known as datagrams, to other hosts on an IP network. Prior communications are not required to set up communication channels or data paths. UDP uses a simple connectionless communication model with a minimum of protocol mechanisms. UDP provides checksums for data integrity and port numbers for addressing different functions at the source and destination of the datagram. It has no handshaking dialogues like TCP, and thus exposes the user's program to any unreliability of the underlying network, meaning there is no guarantee of delivery, ordering, or duplicate protection. Voice over IP and streaming media sessions, they utilize UDP in addition to simple queries and responses such as DNS. Let's talk about TCP, so Transmission Control Protocol. This is one of the main protocols of the Internet Protocol Suite. It originated in the initial network implementation in which it complemented the Internet Protocol, therefore being commonly referred to as TCP/IP. TCP provides reliable, ordered, and error-checked delivery of bytes between applications running on hosts communicating via an IP network. TCP is a connection-oriented, and a connection between the client and a server is established before data can be sent, which requires every packet that has been sent to be checked for delivery. If packets that are transmitted to a receiving computer are not received, the receiving computer cannot assemble the message, and therefore the sending computer has to retransmit the missing packets. For example, if a computer sends a picture of a car, but for some reason the picture is missing parts of the image that display the tires, TCP will instruct the sending computer to retransmit the missing data for the proper assembly of the image. And let's talk about IP. So the Internet Protocol, this is the principal communications protocol in the Internet Protocol Suite for relaying datagrams across network boundaries. Its routing function enables internetworking and essentially establishes the internet. IP has the task of delivering packets from the source host to the destination host solely based on the IP addresses in the packet headers. For this purpose, IP defines packet structures that encapsulate the data to be delivered. It also defines addressing methods that are used to label the datagram with sources and destination information. All right, so now let's go ahead and get into some of this outstanding check on learning, shall we? So the first question is, which of the following answers refers to a protocol used by routers, hosts, and network devices to generate error messages associated with the delivery of IP packets? Is it CCMP, RSTP, Icmp, or Snmp? So which of the following answers refers to a protocol used by routers, hosts, and network devices to generate error messages associated with the delivery of IP packets? The correct answer is Icmp, or the Internet Control Message Protocol. Next question. Which of the answers listed below refers to a protocol used for managing audio-visual communication sessions? Is it SMB, H.323, SCP, or IGP? So which one of these refers to a protocol used for managing audio-visual communication sessions? The correct answer is H.323. And the final question is, POP3 is used for what? Is it name resolution, sending email messages, file exchange, or email retrieval? So what is POP3 used for? The correct answer is email retrieval. All right, so in summary, we have talked about the purpose and use of various networking ports and protocols. Now, if you felt like you've gotten something valuable out of this information, go ahead and hit the like button, share button, drop a comment, but most importantly, subscribe to this channel. Also, go check out my website, Technology G, so that you can get read up on the latest and greatest to help you successfully pass the CompTIA Network Plus N10-007 certification. And until next video, ladies and gentlemen, peace.